Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have some very interesting changes for this week's PTR build, including some big experience bonuses that should be very easy to make use of. We can get up to 55% extra experience during patch 10.1.7, and we'll have a few new ways to make use of that bonus experience to level faster and easier than ever before. The various gear catch-up systems have also changed quite a bit, giving us access to even higher item level gear through easier upgrades, and there's a bit of a mystery on the PTR right now, which could hint towards a brand new system coming our way in this patch, or maybe even for 10.2. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit up that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. First up this week, we have a very interesting experience buff coming in patch 10.1.7 that should speed up leveling quite considerably. A new item was data mined from the latest PTR build called Distilled Knowledge of the Timeways. We don't have a solid source for these items just yet, but with the turbulent Timeways event coming in 10.1.7, it seems like a safe bet that it's going to be related to the 6 weeks of constant time walking that we have to look forward to. So these items probably drop from doing time walking dungeons, and each item will give you a 2% bonus to experience gains when used, and then that can stack up to 10 times. If you get to 10 stacks, the experience bonus is going to be boosted up to 30% instead of just 20%, and it turns into a different buff called Mastery of Timeways. This is actually also very important because there's a new achievement in the patch called Master of the Troubled Timeways, and this requires you to get the Mastery of Timeways buff for 5 consecutive weeks during the event. So you'll want to keep that buff rolling as much as possible until you get the big buff, and make sure you do that for 5 weeks straight during the patch. If you can manage that, you'll get the Sandy Shale Wing mount for all of your troubles, and I'm sure you'll be able to level up a whole bunch of alts during that time as well. This buff is also quite interesting in how its duration works. You can add 1 hour of duration by completing a time walking dungeon, and the buff can have a maximum duration of 5 hours. So as long as you are running time walking dungeons every once in a while, you should be able to keep this buff running as long as you want. We'll have to see how logging out interacts with the buff, but I assume you will probably keep your duration until the next time you log in, which is how most buffs like this work. Right now, this item is bind on account, and you can have up to 5 in your inventory at any given time. It is unique 5, so you can spread them across your alts and save them up for when you want to level, and then you can also send them to whatever alt you might want to level up next if you manage to get to max level on the one you're currently leveling, but you can only hold 5 at a time on any given character, so you won't be able to hold the whole 10 applications you need to max out the buff all at once unless you do spread them across multiple characters. Just something to consider if you want to save these up for a time when you can make the most use out of them. Now, while you will probably have to run time walking dungeons to accumulate the experience bonus and extend its duration, the experience buff itself should apply to pretty much anything, so you can use time walking to get this big experience buff and then do something else to actually level if you don't want to run time walking dungeons all day, which could be very handy with this next little piece of news. This isn't the only experience bonus we have to look forward to in 10.1.7. We will also get what looks like a permanent 25% bonus experience buff for whatever zone the Dream Surge event is currently in. The event encompasses one of the 4 original Dragon Isle zones per week, so each week it will be a different zone, which means this experience buff will change zone alongside it. This should be great for leveling in general, because whenever you're out in that zone, you'll get the bonus experience buff as well as any Dream Surge buffs that players are voting on. Some of these increase your damage quite substantially, or give you extra defensive or utility options to help you stay alive and just kill stuff faster. So it's a double whammy here. You're going to get more experience for the zone, and you're more powerful in the zone. If you add on the 30% buff from the time walking items, you're looking at an easy 55% bonus experience while doing anything in these Dream Surge zones. So leveling in 10.1.7 should be faster and easier than what we've seen recently. It's not just leveling that we're going to be able to catch up with in patch 10.1.7, there are also a whole bunch of new gearing up options. As the PTR has been updated over the last few weeks, these new catch-up gearing options have become clearer and more plentiful. So the first big change seems to have been for the new Dream Surge Coalescence currency. Previously, this was mainly used to just vote on whatever Dream Surge buff you wanted to push through, but it seems like we're going to get another vendor where you can spend this new currency. The vendor currently has account-bound item level 402 gear tokens that cover almost every slot. The only thing that doesn't seem to be here right now is a trinket token, but we have armor, weapons, rings, necklaces, and cloaks, so almost everything. This currency should also be pretty quick to farm. You only need 100 per gear token you want to buy, so this will probably be one of the fastest and easiest ways to gear up any new characters or alts. As soon as they hit max level, you just be able to kit them out in a full set of 402 gear just from this new event and vendor, so you can skip over all of the lower tier crafted gear, any lower tier dungeons, any old catch-up systems, and just go straight to 402. There are also some pets and an unknown expensive item on this vendor, which is probably going to end up being a mount, so there are a few other things you might want to pick up. So we're going to have a new super quick gear up to 400 item level option here, but it doesn't stop there. There is another vendor with higher item level gear rewards at 415. This gear also starts on the champion track, so it should be upgradable up to item level 437. They cover the same gear slots, so pretty much everything besides trinket, including the weapons and jewelry, so this will probably be some of the easiest 415 gear you can get your hands on when the patch goes live, and because this is all gear tokens that you can buy specifically, you can choose exactly what kind of gear you will receive. If you really need a weapon, no problem, buy the weapon. If you really need an extra ring, get the ring. Most other sources of easy 415 gear in the game right now have at least some element of RNG tied to them, so it will be nice to be able to get exactly what you want and need from a vendor. To purchase any of this 415 gear, you are going to need another kind of currency. This one is called Dream Surge Chrysalis. This does seem to be more of a token that goes into your bag instead of a currency right now, so just keep that in mind. These primarily come from the weekly quests tied to the event, so there's at least one you can get per week, but past that, it's currently unclear how many more we can get and where they might come from. This could be a case of the dev team wanting to heavily restrict access to this 415 gear, or the PTR just might not have a complete picture, which is usually the case. It is PTR after all. The good news here is that it looks like rare monsters are also going to play a pretty big part in the special patch events. Every big rare, so the ones that are actively marked on your world map when they pop up, that is within the same zone as the currently active Dream Surge event, all of those will become empowered, so they're harder to kill but they also drop better loot. With enough players zooming around, that first part shouldn't matter too much, so they're just going to be big loot pinatas once again, just like the Forbidden Reach. On the PTR, I've had rares drop item level 402 gear, the same ones that are account bound and can be traded, but I have also seen them drop item level 415 gear in earlier builds, so the rares might be a source of both types of gear, giving you some extra options for gearing up. We do know that the portal invasion events that pop up in the Dream Surge zones will have a mini-boss at the end, and in earlier builds they were dropping 415 gear tokens, so they could also have a chance to drop the actual 415 gear, or they might drop an extra chrysalis. Hopefully they drop the chrysalis token, because then you can pick and choose which pieces of gear you want to get, instead of this being tied into RNG yet again. I think player agency is always important with this kind of thing. Just let us pick the piece of gear we want from the vendor, that's why the vendor is there. And then there are also some other options you might want to spend your chrysalis token on as well, so just dropping the token is always going to be better than just giving us a random piece of 415 gear, in my opinion. The only major problem that I see right now is that each new PTR build seems to have been making this 415 gear harder to get. The chrysalis is potentially just once per week now if other sources don't appear on the PTR, so if they want this gear to be a once a week thing, I'm not sure the rares will be able to drop the 415 gear by the time this goes live. Hopefully they open up this vendor up a bit more and give you access to the 415 gear in the next few builds, so keep an eye out for any further updates as we approach the release date. Now, brand new for this week's build is the addition of a box of worm crests on this vendor that costs the exact same thing, 1 Dream Surge Chrysalis. The box contains 15 fragments, so it's basically just 1 worm crest each time you buy the box. This will give anyone and everyone at least 1 source of worm crests to upgrade their gear, which could let you upgrade to a pretty high item level. Worm crests are used up to item level 437, so if you can get enough worm crests from this new vendor, you could potentially gear up very quickly and get very high in 10.17 without having to go into any group content whatsoever. It's all going to depend on how readily available the Dream Surge Chrysalis tokens are and where the dev team decides they can drop from. One thing I will say is that before this week's build, most of this stuff was bind on account, and now quite a lot of it is bind on pickup, including those chrysalis tokens. They were bind on account previously, which meant that even if you got one per week, you could get one per character per week, which then you could funnel to a different character to maybe gear up some ults, maybe help gear up your main, or trade for those worm crests to help focus one character into a lot of upgrades. That's not going to be the case if the bind on pickup thing stays. That will severely restrict the trading you can do between characters, so your main won't be able to help your ults get 415 gear or the worm crests, and you can't trade the currency anymore either, so that's a bit of a bummer. Hopefully they change that back, so if the gear tokens aren't bind on account, the currency is at least bind on account, so you can help your ults gear up faster with your mains, or just speed up the overall process of using this vendor to gear up. Patch 10.1.7 will not be very long. If 10.07 is anything to go by, it could be just as short as 6 weeks, so time gating this gear doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. The next major patch, 10.2, will also come with Season 3 of Dragonflight, which will be another big gear reset, so it really doesn't matter if players can gear up decently quickly at the end of this season. It's not going to tip the scales at all when everyone will need to gear up again in a couple of months' time. I would argue that this patch would be way more fun and see far more engagement if you could quickly and easily gear up. People want to be able to get their ults ready or reroll their mains, especially with big changes in major patches, or just play something else for a bit. Letting everyone gear up at the end of a season is a good thing, but if you limit them to just one piece of item level 415 gear per week, I honestly feel like a lot of folks just won't bother. That's just my 2 cents on the matter though. I would love to hear what you think about gearing up at the end of a season with these 0.7 patches. Should it be faster and easier to get caught up ready for the next major patch, or should gearing up stay important throughout the entire season, even at the end? Let me know what you think in the comment section below about gear catch-up systems. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is a bit of an oddity. This arcane forge just popped up on the map in the most recent PTR build, and we honestly have no idea what it's for. It has an icon and a name on the map, so it has to be important for something, right? Decor or placeholder stuff doesn't usually get purposefully marked on the map, so what could it be? Looking at it, it does seem to be Draenei in origin. It's got that Exodar look to it with the colours and the symbols. It could definitely fit on one of the many Draenei ships that we've been on at this point, and this patch does include new customization options for the Draenei, allowing them to use red and grey colorations of the Minari, so that's definitely interesting. But those options would probably just be available in the barbershop. There's no real reason to have this big new doodad in the middle of Valdrakken and marked on the map if it was just to let Draenei change their skin color to be red. I mean, I guess that's possible, but I would be surprised if that ended up being the case. The Draenei quest does seem to involve the Legion and going back to Argus and seeing what happened to all the Draenei there after the Legion was kind of defeated, so we might get some more tech back from that quest. That could be where we get it from and why we now have it, but that doesn't really explain what it could do. The thing that interests me the most is the location of this new forge. It's right in the middle of the crafting area, which leads me to believe it's going to have something to do with crafting or professions. We don't have any huge crafting or profession updates coming in 10.17, that we know of anyway, but this could be getting ready for a big update in 10.2. Patch 10.2 will include a full gear reset, like we talked about, so we'll have a new raid, new PvP season, new Mythic Plus season with a new rotation of dungeons, and we'll also need something else to bump up the item level of crafted gear. For Season 2 and 10.1, that new item was the Shadowflame Spark, so maybe this Arcane Forge is how we get our Season 3 Spark, or maybe it will allow us to upgrade crafted gear without the need of another Spark, or it could just be something completely different. I saw Wowhead brought up the potential of reforging returning to the game, which is definitely a possibility, but I think a crafting update is much more likely. Either way, it's weird, and we have no idea what it's currently for, but it does seem to be important. Hopefully we find out more about what this strange new system or feature could be in this week's round of PTR updates, but that's all we have so far for this week, so that's it for this video. What do you think this Arcane Forge could be used for? Something Draenei story related, or do you think it's a new crafting option? How are you going to use this new big experience bonus coming our way, and do you think the gear catch-up systems should be more open and accessible in patch 10.17, or do we have too many ways to get easy gear already? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon or click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.